My friends, today we begin with a bombshell of a news. It is bombshell because it's about Russian strategic bombers. But before we go, I want to say that from now on you will see all of the sources I use in my videos in the description below. This includes different Telegram channels and all of the sources made for every specific video. All in the description so you can check them out yourself and make up your mind about them yourself. Don't take my word for it. First bombshell of a news takes us to Novgorod, Russia, which is very close to Estonia. Actually, I want to measure the distance to Estonia. It is only 170 kilometers from Estonia. What is 1.5 hours of drive with car? Well, we're gonna talk about the Solntsevo Airbase of the Soltsy settlement city in Novgorod region. We zoom in, we see this military airbase, and this is home for Russian strategic bombers. Tu-22M. Now these bombers from these airfields lift up almost daily to attack Ukraine. They carry missiles. They're also able to carry Fab 250 and Fab 500 glide bombs. They're stationed in this airfield, and Ukraine yesterday attacked this airfield with their drones. How is this possible? The furthest point to Ukrainian border is 670 kilometers away. I don't think Ukraine would... it's very unlikely the drones lifted up from the Ukrainian soil. What's more likely is that the drones lifted up somewhere around the airbase in Russia. It's a pro-Ukrainian Russian partisan movement or Ukrainian intelligence network in Russia, which has drone capability. They launched their drones against this very strategically important airfield, and the biggest thing is that two of these Russian strategic bombers got damaged. Eyewitnesses said that one of them burned to the ground, as you can see in these photos, and the other one was heavily damaged. Why is this so important? Well, because Russia cannot produce these planes for over a few decades now. These planes were made by the Tupolev airplane company to the Soviet Air Force. It was an extremely expensive program and the Soviet Union had money to spend on this. Now Russia has these planes. They are their nuclear capable bombers. Part of their nuclear capable bomber fleet, which is not numerous at all. It is very limited. Unable to produce any more, most of the planes being ancient. Taking out these two planes, huge deal. How did Russia react? Well, they took all of their other Tu-22M planes from this airfield and they flew them to Murmansk, the Kola Peninsula right here up in the north, out of the reach of Ukrainian drones. It's also very cold here. No partisan wants to go up there. It's a joke, of course. The Tupolev 22M was first deployed in combat missions in the war between Soviet Union and Afghanistan in 1987 to 1989. The war lasted longer, but the planes were deployed at the end of the 80s only. The Tu-22M was also used in the Russian invasion of Chechnya, the first Russo-Chechen war of 1995. And the primary use of this aircraft is its nuclear capacity, the ability to carry nuclear weapons, but it's also designed for conventional strikes like missiles and glide bombs, and it has been used by Russia right now to bombard Ukraine with missiles. It can also be deployed on anti-ship and reconnaissance missions, although it being quite outdated by today's standards, especially compared to NATO air forces, its reconnaissance use is questionable. The effectiveness of the Russian Air Force bombing operations have become halted for some time because these bombers were how Russia shot their missiles out. The operations of the Russian Air Force have become very complicated for at least some time. Also, the very fact that Ukrainian drones were able to reach this very important airfield, attacking these very important planes for Russia, shows that Russian air defense capabilities have all been moved to occupied Ukraine or Russian border and Ukraine, and Russian inland is quite defenseless. Well, it is logical because no country in the world, not even the US, could defend such a vast area of land. There's plenty of strategic targets in Russia which are just undefended from aerial attacks because there simply is not enough air defense systems in the world to defend them. Russia is so vast. This is why one of the only options is just to move the strategically important bombers physically so far from Ukraine as possible, which Russia has done. Move them to Kola Peninsula near Murmansk. My friends, today I have a surprise for you. Don't get frightened, but here we go. Ooh, look at these Crimean beaches. Damn, these Crimean beaches look hot. I wonder if there's a beach party in Crimea. Same Javelin. There is! Crimean beach party, exactly what I wanted. But I can't go, I don't have any equipment for a beach party. Whoa! Equipment! This is Saint Javelin, my friends. This is a clothing company that has donated over 2.3 million USD for Ukraine. They have amazing designs, and they have sent me all of the equipment necessary for me to join the Crimean beach party next summer when Crimea is liberated. Well, first of all, I need a proper shirt. This is the first and last time you'll see me in a tank top. I would have never thought this is going to happen on my channel, but here it is. A Ukrainian soldier wearing a pink bucket hat that is called the kalush. So it's a Ukrainian surfing kalush soldier. Ah damn, but it's so hot in Crimea. It's like 40 degrees Celsius. I have my beach hat. I'm ready to go. You gotta protect yourself from the sun because it's really 40 degrees there in the summer. It's gonna burn. So let's be safe with the Crimean beach hat. Damn it, I don't feel weird enough to go to the Crimean beach party. Sucks! Crimean beach party sucks! I think I can get away with socks and sandals on a Crimean beach party. Any Estonian can, let's go! And finally, my Crimean beach party pin. This is my get-in ticket. It goes right here and I'm ready to go, man, let's go. If you want all of this Crimean beach party equipment for the next year's beach party happening in liberated Crimea, go to the links in the description below. Get this amazing equipment for you, and I'll see you at the beach party. Thank you, Saint Javelin, for sponsoring this video. My friends, here we have the Russian losses of the past 24 hours, 21st of August 2023. And I say it again, there is no official list of Ukrainian forces. There is no official list of Ukrainian losses anywhere. If there would be, I would include it. But as for now, let's continue with the Russian losses. 460 Russian liquidated personnel, 12 tanks, 14 armed personnel vehicles, 19 artillery systems, no anti-aircraft warfare systems, and no aircrafts eliminated, knocked out cold. These aircraft destroyed today will be included in tomorrow's list. 5 UAVs, 12 vehicles and fuel tanks, and 4 special equipment. There are some major breakthroughs in the process of giving F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. President Zelensky met the Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen at the fighter wing Skridstrup in the Royal Danish Airbase in Jutland. In addition to the Dutch F-16, Ukraine will receive an additional 19 F-16 fighter jets from Denmark. The Netherlands will supply a whopping 42 F-16s for Ukraine. And I can understand why are they so motivated to donate these incredibly effective and expensive jets to Ukraine. Well, because 9 years ago, the Malaysian Airlines MH17 was shot down over eastern Ukraine. It was done by a unit under the control of the very same Igor Kirkin. This is why they call him the terrorist. He was responsible directly in shooting down this plane. And a lot of the passengers on that planes were Dutch, Netherlandians, Dutchans. How do you say it? So giving these 42 F-16s is a Dutch way to show that they have not forgot, they have not forgave, and there will be revenge through the hands of the Ukrainians. Ukraine had 131 Soviet-made aircraft before the war started. All of them were inferior to the F-16 in almost any way possible. The F-16 is, compared to what the Ukraine has right now, and even compared to what the Russia has, most of their aircraft, F-16 is incredibly effective, modernized and capable. Of course, Russia does have jets that are more modern, more capable, more expensive, better equipped, but Russia has a very limited number of these jets and they are very afraid to deploy them close to Ukraine. I will very quickly read you the specs of the F-16s that Ukraine will be receiving from Dutch and the Danish. Features of Ukraine's future F-16 fleet with the Dutch and Danish F-16 ANBM Block 20 MLU with a AN/APG 66 fire control radar that has a range of 150 kilometers, and these planes are compatible with a wide range of missiles, including AIM-9 Sidewinder, AIM-120 AMRAAM, air-to-air missiles, any bomb with lasers or GPS guidance, JDAMs, glide bombs. These planes can almost carry anything the West has to offer. But now, my friends, the sad part and unfortunately the real part that I hate to report, but I have to. The process of transferring the F-16s to Ukraine will be even faster than the actual training of the pilots. That is the most difficult and most time-consuming thing that you cannot really speed up. According to Washington Post, the first batch of the Ukrainian pilots that have started training on the F-16s won't complete their training until the next summer. So it will take a little bit less than a year from now, or close to a year. And unless there will be Western pilots flying these F-16s that will arrive in Ukraine earlier, there is no Ukrainian pilots to fly them. If you cut the training short, you will have accidents that are happening regularly in Russia. The planes just fall down. The pilots need to be good. The first batch of 6 pilots were chosen. These pilots all speak English on a very good level, but they still have to go an additional 6 months of language courses just to get very familiar with the aviation linguistics. And only after that theory and language course, the combat aviation courses begin, which take an additional 6 months. They have not started yet. And the schedule of them have not yet been agreed upon. I'm sure the Western countries will break all of these obstacles, but the realist view is that Ukraine will get these fighters before the pilots are ready. The pilots take time. The pilots are the most valuable things, as valuable as the planes, if not even more. The training is incredibly expensive, time-consuming, and it has to be done well, because we have seen what an air force with bad pilots ends up with. Planes falling from the sky like we do see in Russia. My friends, let's go to the southern front, and according to this photo right here, which comes from a Russian officer present in Robotyne, the Russian situation in the settlement, you see it right here, is incredibly difficult. He claims that the Russians only have presence on the very southern part of the urbanized area and they're preparing to pull out from the settlement. Ukrainians are pushing very strongly, so very soon we'll see Robotyne liberated by the armed forces of Ukraine. Also, this southern front axis from Robotyne is the closest to the first Russian defensive lines, which you can see on this map. The grey areas are actually touching the defensive lines. It's the very first Ukrainian axis to reach the first Russian defensive line. As you can see, that's the first one, there is also the second one, and after the second one, there is an empty ground, there's nothing. Let's see which Russian units are against Ukrainian forces near the Robotyne. We have the 70th Motorized Rifle Regiment, we have the 1430th Motorized Rifle Regiment, and we have the 291st Guards Motorized Rifle Regiment. All of the Motorized Rifle Regiments, this means they have tanks and they have infantry fighting vehicles also on their side. Now, my friends, let's zoom into Velika Novosylka axis and the recently liberated settlement of Staromaiorske. Ukrainians improved their positions west of this settlement, and of course this map does not show it, but these fields you see right here in the grey zone, Ukrainian forces have advanced and liberated these positions, gained control over these positions. Now the main push happens towards Zavitne Bozhanie, south from Uruzhaine, but as you have heard before and many people are talking about this, let's look at the topographical map to get the better understanding. This river, Mokryali River, is in a valley, as rivers tend to be in a valley, meaning that both sides of the river are heightened grounds, meaning that a very direct frontal assault on Zavitne Bozhanie is not the most smartest course of action, because the Russians have artillery positions on both sides of the heightened ground next to Mokryali River, so taking the heightened grounds around the river is enough to take the river valley itself. You don't really even need to take the Zavitne Bozhanie settlement. To take the surrounding areas, Russians will have to pull back or face enormous losses. We have the 60th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade in the Zavitne Bozhanie, holding the first defensive lines against the Ukrainians, and sides are made up of 37th Separate Guards Motor Rifle Brigade and the 247th Guards Air Assault Regiment. Air Assault Regiment can mean VDV or Descending Forces, which are semi-special forces. They're not special forces, but they are more and better trained Russian forces. You could say the best 10% of the Russian army is always air assault or descending forces, and they are deployed onto this front, meaning the Russians are feeling the pain and deploying their best forces here. Now, my friends, let's zoom into Bakhmut, and the Russian forces here are completely different. You can feel the pain because to the north of Bakhmut, 137th Guards Airborne Regiment from the 106th Airborne Division Desantnik forces. South of Bakhmut, 117th Airborne Regiment from the 98th Airborne Division. Desantnik forces. 80th Guards Tank Red Banner Regiment. A full tank regiment deployed near Bakhmut. Inglishivka, the Russians have pushed in 83rd Separate Guards Air Assault Brigade. The whole Bakhmut front is covered with the best Russia has to offer. The best armor, the best trained infantry. We already know that Klishivka is in a valley. Look at this topographical map. Ukraine controls these heightened areas here. Shooting into the Klishivka valley, Russia stubbornly holds on to it with their, as you can see, Air Assault Brigade, which are one of the best trained and last of the Russia's best trained forces. It's a kill box, and Russia is feeding their most well-trained men into the meat grinder here. This is why Ukrainians are not very much pushing to Klishivka, because they have a perfect position, elevated, shooting down into the valley, eliminating the best Russia has to offer. To the north of Klishivka, these heightened areas are still contested, half of them under Ukrainian control, half of them under Russian occupation. And here we see Rosgvardia Unit Akhmat. Now they are like Putin's personal military police in the Russian army. They are a fighting force, but they're also an inner control. Akhmat is a Kadyrov's personal military unit, deployed, the Chechens, deployed into this Bakhmut area because the Ukrainians are not afraid of them anymore. They have beaten them many times, but the Russians are afraid of them. The Desantnik forces are motivated and very well trained. But then we have forces here like the 4th Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade. Well, this Akhmat unit we see here, the Rosgvardia, is perfect for controlling and intimidating these Russian units to do what they're told. Chechens are used as inner control. But the bad news comes from the north of Bakhmut, the settlement of Yagidne, and the west of Yagidne we see, well actually we don't because this map doesn't show it, but you can see the sources in the description below where I got my information. Russians have pushed and occupied additional fields and forest belts west from Yagidne, this area. We can see there's a defensive trench line right here. Unfortunately, this was reoccupied by the Russian forces. Time will tell if the coming Ukrainian counterattack, localized counterattack, which always happens, will re-liberate it. A significant meeting took place between the Japanese Prime Minister, the President of the USA, and the Prime Minister of South Korea. It took place in Camp David in the United States. Three countries discussed the China and the North Korean containment policy in any way possible. This was the main topic. China's very aggressive foreign policy in the recent years is the reason for this meeting. These three militarily very powerful countries are working together to contain China. And this is not just a play of words, they physically contain. The United States already has a variety of bases just near Chinese territorial waters, and they're making additional bases very fast in cooperation with these countries, and also Australia. The goal is to physically block China and their territorial waters with United States and their allies' bases, and to stop the expansion of the Chinese Navy to the international oceans. The United States has separate military joint cooperations with all of these different countries, and there's no unilateral agreement yet to form a unified front against China, but if China continues on the path they are right now, I think this agreement will be in effect in the future. There will be Japan, South Korea, Australia, and the United States. They might form a pact, and boom, we have ourselves a new Cold War. The last news is about the Kerch bridge, but not the news bombings, the very first bombing on October 8th, 2022. It was a bombshell of a news because it was the very first time the bridge was on flames, the train was in flames. Nobody was expecting it, and it was a very successful operation. General Vasil Malyuk, head of the Ukrainian SBU, released these photos of the bombing. It shows hexagon wrapped in plastic to divert any attention and to pass through the X-rays that the Russians have on the Kerch bridge. It looks like a regular pellet shipping of whatever they want to ship in these trucks. Wrapped in that plastic, hidden away from the eyes and the X-rays, were 21 tons of explosives in behind of that truck. That was enough to knock out 2 entire sections of the bridge and knock cracks into the foundation of the support beams. My friends, in the weekend I made a video where I explained the situation of my mental health, and you guys were very supportive in the comments actually, and I read almost all of the comments. There were very many of them. It took me many hours, but I did it, and I truly feel the support. I have an amazing audience and I want to thank you. Without you I couldn't make these videos. Without the viewers these videos wouldn't have any sense. So thank you to all of the supporters, and I want to read you 5 patron names as I usually do. But I'll begin with a name actually that came from PayPal because he didn't want to make a repeated donation, so he just used PayPal and asked me to butcher his name. So here we go. Fletcher Delaney. Thank you for your support through PayPal. And now on to Patreon. Joshua Winter. David Molnar. Mike Echer. Robert Suris. Thank you to these 5 people, I really appreciate you. In the next video, I'll read the next 5. If you want to support me, the Patreon link or the PayPal, both are in the description below. Thank you for watching, my friends. Thank you for being there and keeping your eye on this war, educating yourself and not falling under the Russian narrative of things. And until my next video, stay cool, my friends, and bye-bye.